Welcome to episode 284. It's been a busy week, and hopefully, you guys are having a good busy week. I know I was talking to a colleague this morning. It was kind of funny. I said to him, we're in a meeting, and he's like, "Oh, it's this week should be quiet." I'm like, "Oh, don't say that." Right? As soon as you say that, everything's going to blow up. We're going to have incidents. People are going to happen. You never say it's going to be quiet. I said I used to work in cyber or physical security, and one of the things you never said at the start of a shift, it's going to be a quiet night tonight. Everything would blow up, everything under the sun. So just one of the things, I hope you guys are having a good time. There's a lot we're going to cover today. I got Chris on as a CISO, and I'm going to give you his bio because he's got a lot of depth of information and knowledge. As I was talking to him and just learning more about him, I'm really excited about this episode. So as a CEO and a co-founder of Vigilant, Chris has led a global cybersecurity firm delivering cutting-edge solutions to safeguarding organizations from today's most advanced threats. With over 30 years of IT and cybersecurity expertise, he has pioneered innovations like forensicality, validated detection systems, and secure protocol translation, earning multiple patents that set new industry standards to precision and reliability. A lot of stuff he's working on too, is things that are coming out and then probably in the near future too that I want you guys to keep an eye on. Vigilance is also focused on extending beyond business growth. He's built a company rooted in purpose. He's dedicated 25%. This is really kind of interesting. A lot of people do when you look at Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, when they're talking about kind of a global experience of business, giving back to the industry, he's got 25% of his profits go globally to initiatives combating human trafficking, child exploitation, supporting orphan care. So a lot of good things on the cybersecurity side, protection, but he's also looking after people as well. So through forensic fusion initiatives in partnership with the FBI, he's empowered citizens to combat cybercrime and brought down major trafficking networks and ransomware groups. So a lot of stuff we're going to cover, a lot of great information. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. Welcome, Chris. How's things going?
Things are great out here in the snowy Midwest, Brandon.
I'm in Toronto, so I get it. We just got a little bit of snowfall today. So we're up to, I think, 36 inches of snow.
36 inches of snow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we had 15, not quite 36 inches.
So, well, welcome to Canada.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's crazy, man. Oh my gosh.
So,
It took me 5 hours to plow my driveway with a snowblower. So I can't imagine what your life is like with 36 inches of snow.
Oh, it's pretty crazy. And I have a small Bernedoodle, small dog, and just put her in and she's gone. You lose her. 17 awesome. Pounds, like small little puppy. And you lose her in the snow.
That's crazy.
So want to jump in here because there's a lot we want to cover. I know we only got an hour to cover a lot of information. With your experience and expertise, like what are you seeing in the industry right now?
I mean, across the whole board?
Across the whole board. Like if there was one area you're going to go, that's the thing I'm keeping my eye on, what would that be?
Right. I mean, there's two aspects, right? I think there's the what you should be looking at, and there's the thing what I think everyone else is looking at, right? And
I want to know what you're looking at.
Okay. What I'm looking at is, what's really interesting about cyber is how you fight the threat actor hasn't changed a lot over the last 30 years, in the sense that the technology or the approach that you should take, understanding things like the full stack, like the OSI stack, understanding how networking and operations work, understanding the core aspects of how a technology should work. Those things all create baselines and data sets that are pretty well known. But unfortunately, because of things that are, I would say, fads in our industry, people are looking for a solution because companies, I would say this, the barrier of entry to doing security well in those things I just talked about is hard. But once you get through that barrier of entry, then it becomes very easy, and you can see very clearly from a visibility standpoint, not from an observability standpoint, but from a visibility standpoint. We can talk about that in a second. But from a visibility standpoint, security becomes easy. what's happened is there's so many fads because people weren't doing that stuff well, that people really, I think, are hoping for a solution, and they're just going fad after fad after fad after fad after fad,
Yeah.
and we continue to go down this path. So
So the
I'm
silver
looking
bullet
for
kind of approach.
organizations that are going to grasp some of the foundational ways to do cybersecurity again.
Yeah, like you're talking like the silver bullet kind of approach. Like I could grab that
Yeah,
one solution, one
right.
technology, and I'm good. I'm all
Mhm.
set up. I'm secure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This I'm secure. And that's the thing is you're never like all secure,
Mhm.
right? And when you look at these fads, they're all very polished.
Mhm.
I mean, even look at our Intel reports, right? If you get an Intel report from someone and it is polished as all get out, like it looks like it went through multiple marketing team members,
Mhm.
they've tidied that up. That Intel's too old for you to use, right?
Right.
Like we are so focused on trying to present this beautiful way of doing cyber, and in reality it's warfare, and warfare is never beautiful, right? It's gritty.
Mhm.
It has to be timely. You have to get information that might not pass a marketing test, but it's going to pass the defense test, right, or the
Right.
detection test. So
Yeah, and I find that with a lot of reports too. I mean, there's a lot of threat intelligence out there, and
mhm,
one of the previous companies that I worked with,
yeah,
we had real-time threat intelligence because we were dealing with a lot of ransomware
mhm,
engagements. So
right,
our threat intelligence was based on our real cases that we were
mhm,
dealing with in the moment.
mhm,
So as
right,
we're getting
yeah,
information, because what are threat actors doing right now? Well, okay,
yeah,
they're doing this, and this is how they're exfiltrating.
right,
This is their method of attack. Like we get it in kind of a real time. Versus, like you
mhm,
said, you get that report. That data might be 48 hours old,
mhm,
a week old, a month old. You never
yeah.
know if it's gone through due diligence and
Mhm.
marketing and all that, and when you're actually really getting it.
Yeah, right. And the other aspect that I look at too is, when I'm looking at technology to see what it works, I'm really looking under the hood, right? Like
Right.
I'm looking to see, does the processor on that thing can it even do what it's supposed to do?
Mhm.
Most systems out there, they're running x86 or ASIC chipsets, and they don't have the power to actually do deep packet inspection, but
Right.
you have major loss in packets coming through there, and that causes a fidelity issue, and then you feed that into AI, which is the fad, right? And now you have data going into an AI platform that is degraded because you have massive packet loss, and now your machine learning, which is supposed to be awesome and turn back around these amazing detections, are learning off a degraded data set. So my thing is really, and so back to what is the one thing I'm looking at? I'm looking at data fidelity, right?
Okay.
I'm looking at cyber technology that has high end focused data fidelity, because all the other stuff we're doing doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter if you have great learning on an AI platform if your data fidelity feeding into it is bad. It doesn't matter if your Intel teams have bad, can create the best Intel in the world if your data fidelity is bad.
Right.
Like, it doesn't that all that doesn't matter, and I'm also now on the fad side, I'm looking at AI because I mean, look at this last week. You had, in 1 week we had, Claude bot turn into Molt bot, then turned into OpenClaw, and tons of people installed this AI panacea agent, and massive, breaches are going to come out of this last week that
Right.
we can't even imagine. So
So now with that being said, going back to the data, why is that important? So like you're getting, and then I want to give you context here.
yeah,
You've got anyone watching the show, like in the stream, from people starting out in the industry to executives and everyone in between,
okay,
right? Some people to
yeah,
do threat hunting and
hmm,
ransomware and kind of
right,
intelligence understand the
hmm,
the the need for quality data.
hmm,
But
yeah.
on the entry side to the senior leadership, why is that important?
Well, I mean, you look at it across the board, like all the people you just mentioned, executives, right? At the executive level, if, by the time a decision gets to them, depends on the size of the organization, but they're making, you know, potentially business ending decisions or business saving decisions on what they decide to put into their organization from a cyber standpoint, or they're making a decision on purchasing a significant amount of equipment that can cost,
Mhm.
quarter percent of their revenue sometimes. So that's important, but when you look at these different personas, your executive team is really looking at, like, did we get a good return on our investment, right? And you got your CISOs that are looking at, well, can I communicate risk appropriately to my senior team or the board? Because basically, if you look, they have an 18-month life cycle in their role right now. That's
Right.
that's crazy. And so which means that their biggest problem, which is communicating value to their executive team, is struggling right now, right?
Right.
And so there's this mistrust between those two groups, and then you have your analysts, and all the people in the trenches that are kicking down doors and trying to find bad stuff through threat hunting. They're bogged down in their roles by too much of the wrong data, right? And so their whole job, most of it, is just sifting through what they don't need so they can get to what they do need.
Right.
So what bad data does first is it creates a big deficit of time in an organization. And if you
Mhm.
look at the most important thing in our lives, it's time, right?
Right.
Like that's it. So, bad data causes that. But then the other thing, and this is the hard part, is so you have this time issue. Well, then now the things that we're using, especially with organizations coming out, every cybersecurity company out there is trying to race to get AI agents into the detection platforms.
Right.
I just even this week I was looking at to see how who's popped up with the most recent agents and et cetera. And you see some of these organizations, and I know what's behind the hood of some of those, and I
Mhm.
know their data fidelity is bad. You see other ones that are saying, "Hey, we're slow rolling this because we want to do it carefully," and those are the ones I respect more, because at the end of the day, is it sexy to get an AI agent onto someone's security detection platform? Yes. And why are they after that? Why is the person excited about it? It's because in their brain they think, "Hey," or in their hope, "it's going to save me time." Right? It's back to that time thing. So AI is this big panacea that everyone's looking at to save us time, right? To do more things. The problem with it is when you take this data fidelity already without AI, it's dragging us down. It's causing us this overload of extra data that we have to sift through, which takes away time. But when you put it into AI, now it exponentially gets in the wrong direction,
Right.
right? If I and in a lot of cases, even on a firewall, for instance, we'll identify packet loss on a firewall, right?
Mhm.
We'll say, okay, there's 5% packet loss, 20% packet loss. What you don't that's the packet loss that's passing through the firewall for the primary job of firewall, which is just routing traffic or stopping it, right?
Mhm.
What you're not seeing is what is the packet loss between that layer and the detection layer,
Right.
right? And so that if you've got 20% packet loss on a firewall, well, then you add that to the detection layer, you might have 30,
Right.
35%. You load that into a learning tool, you've got exponentially bad problems. And so we wonder why, every year the time to detect a threat or the dwell time in an organization keeps getting bigger.
Right.
It's not because these threat actors are getting more skilled, right? It's not, right? It's really because we're as an industry, we're looking in the wrong places, and we're not concerned about data fidelity. So does that answer your question?
It does, and I think
Yeah.
the other thing to add to your point is that, yes, you're at 100% saving time, but you're also
Mhm.
looking at when you're on the executive level, you're looking at
Yeah.
saving on resources and money. Because
Right.
if I
Yeah.
can incorporate this AI, do I really need 10 analysts? Do I
Mhm.
really need that, person that's doing
Mhm.
that SOC or SIM?
Right.
Do I
Yeah.
really need that? Because
Yeah.
now I have this tool
Mhm.
that should eliminate that, and then
Mhm.
where's my cost savings?
Mhm.
So I think that
Right.
some of the things that you're talking about, where I'm hearing the discussion is AI going to do that as well? It's going to reduce risk,
Mhm.
liability, kind of do that. Is it's going to be innovative next generation? Kind of we all hear, but also you're looking, okay, the response time should be quicker because now I don't have a human in the loop. It's actually the technology. So the data should be punched out pretty quickly. I should be able to put some prompts in, whatever, and then
Mhm.
also the data is right there. But also, I don't need that many resources.
Right. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, we adopt AI, at Vigilant. We do it in different places. I mean, we've been adopting AI for, years. The thing that you have to be aware of is you have to understand, you know, how good is, why are you rolling it out in the first place? Like,
Mhm.
what is the exact problem you're trying to solve? And I think a lot of people roll AI out and they're just like, go solve the problems, right?
Right.
And they're not really looking at, well, what's the business case, or what's the thing in my organization that I need to exponentially grow, or what's the thing about the human that I need to scale. And then you go solve that one problem with AI. You identify if it did the outcome you wanted, and then you expand it. Like for us, we've been able to uh, exponentially ship code
Right.
that in high production quality, because we've built systems to create small loops. If you remember, if you've ever seen OODA loops, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. We've created systems to allow our developers to take small progressive loops through AI so that you're not losing context and you're able to ship code really quick to the point where I have a developer that ships 150,000 lines of high fidelity code into an application, a month. But the thing with security is, we don't really look at now at Vigilant. We look at these different things because obviously I'm talking about it, but the thing I'm trying to get people to realize, across the industry when I go and speak about these things, is that you have to start with the data first, right? And I think as humans, we're so used to the normal systems we have, which are slower, right? So you can catch these data problems faster, or not faster, but you can catch them before they get really bad. But as we start to use AI more in cybersecurity, you're not going to have that same ability to do that within your systems. And so you're going to have to really make sure that the way you collect and store and analyze or even validate data before you put it into these systems is important. And for security professionals, that's one of the biggest questions I would say ask the providers that are saying they're bringing AI. Like, how are they validating this? And in a lot of cases, some of the claims that are in the cyber industry, they're just impossible to do if you look at the way that AI architecture works.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times you're asking, like, how are they teaching the LLM or the agentic AI? Like, how are they educating it? And then, like you said, the due diligence on the other side, and making sure the data is what it is, it's supposed to be, right?
Right.
Now, with that being said, kind of looking on the other side, devil's advocate, wouldn't you have paralysis by analysis then too, because there's just so much data?
So that's where, looking at, you could, right? But that's because the other problem with data, and this is in our industry as well, is, a lot of organizations don't know how to validate data, when it comes to cyber. And I can say, if you do it the right way, it's very fast, actually. It's similar to like diffing a document with your lawyer, right? But the problem is a lot of these, the approach to collecting data has become just gather it all because we don't know what we're going to need, right? And that's where, and even look at the pricing models in our industry, right? I mean, everyone prices everything on storage, so it's not in the vendor's best interest to go, hey, let's figure out how to minimize the amount of data you have in our SIM, right? They make more money if you have more data there. So, I think that's one of the issues too, is that, the very systems or the technologies we drive, the innovation inside of them are not driven by, making sure we have the right data or high fidelity data.
Right. And that makes sense. I mean, I completely agree with that. And I think the other thing that drives that is compliance, right?
Yeah.
When you look at that, compliance requires that you have, your hot storage, cold storage for so many months / years, because if you have to do an investigation, you have to be able to pull that data.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And that's, if in a lot of those things, compliance itself, it's driven by fear, in a lot of cases. And you and I both know that, everything in a compliance requirement doesn't actually make you secure. It's really just about, governance or proving what you didn't do, right? Whereas in a lot of cases, cyber can be a lot easier than we make it. But again, I think it all goes back to that, that question of bad data, and bad data has driven fear. It's driven more attacks. It's driven obfuscation by threat actors. It's caused an industry to move in a direction based out of, I think, more of a reactionary step instead of a proactive step.
Well, I think it's kind of both ways, because I mean, you've dealt with forensics, investigations, ransomware. I think you've got both sides. You've got people who are doing it really well, and then people are trying to circumvent shadow IT, kind of like, do we really need that? And then they get popped, and then all of a sudden they start to move the needle towards. And I find with compliance, like I said, it's a framework that people need to follow.
Yes.
But I think it's because of that gap of that sliding scale. Not everyone's doing it the same.
Right.
And you have that where they have to kind of push the ones that are not as mature to mature their environment to at least get up to a certain point.
Yeah.
So
right.
critical infrastructures, health care,
Yeah.
finance, whatever is not getting compromised. Like
Mhm.
at least you're doing this, and that should get you to a point where you shouldn't be getting an incident, an event,
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
ransomware every
Every day.
single week, every single
Yeah.
month,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
As long as you're doing what we're kind of
Mhm.
guiding you. So I do
Yeah.
see the need for it, and then being in this industry, and I'm sure you do it, where you're
Oh, I think
going.
compliance is important. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, for sure.
I think you've gone to meetings where you're like, why aren't you doing this? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
just the things that you've already know. Why aren't you guys implementing this? Like I
Yeah.
know I work with an organization where I was talking to MSP and I said, like, you guys specialize in healthcare. I said, why aren't you doing a HIPAA gap assessment, right from the start when you take on, any type of client? They're
Mhm.
like, well, no, we don't do until 6 months in. I said,
Yeah.
well, then you're already 6 months behind because
Yeah. Right.
there's controls and things you need to put in place
Right.
to make sure they're mature. Now,
Mhm.
if they're a net new client, right, then they're not even HIPAA compliant. So
Mhm.
now they have to get your infrastructure, stand it up, the IT. Then you have to work on security compliance and all that.
Mhm.
And now
Yeah.
you're starting at 6 months. So they're now probably
Mhm.
another 18 months out.
Right.
Why
Yeah.
don't you start at ground zero,
Yeah.
build up the infrastructure, build up everything securely, write the
Right.
policies, do all that, and
Right.
then in 12 months, maybe 9 months, you go in front of an auditor and say, okay,
Mhm.
we're ready.
Yeah. Right. And what if a threat actor entered your environment at that 0 day as well when you started all of that? Now you're 18 months later and you're like, oh, now we found them, but they've been here for 18 months. And that's consistent with what you see. I mean, look at Verizon's report every year. It gets higher. It's 287 days now from the
Right.
time a threat actor starts doing something when they're detected. And compliance is extremely important. I think what I'm trying to get across here is that yes, do compliance. Yes, follow those regulations because it's a baseline. And you said you have executives, you have people of all across the whole gamut within the industry. I think the thing that I would say to executives with that is, you know, don't let compliance be your target, right? Your
Mhm.
target's beyond that. And compliance is just that baseline, but you've got to constantly reevaluate your security program constantly. And you have to do it faster than a threat actor can, right?
Right.
So if a threat actor could potentially get in your environment every month, you've got to be reviewing and changing your security program twice a month, right? That type of thing, right? You have to constantly evolve. You have to know what's happening at the ground pulse level. And I think a lot of organizations look at that, hey, we got SOC 2 compliance, and they just feel good. And that just should not be a stopping point. That should be a
Mhm.
starting point. And then the real work begins
Right.
once you become compliant.
Yeah, it's a milestone, right? And a lot
Yeah,
of,
it's a
like you
milestone.
said, a lot of the times when you're hitting like ISO 27001, NIST,
Mhm.
you got SOC 2 Type 2, whatever that may be,
Mhm.
it's a milestone to hit. Celebrate, cheer. I mean, you guys like CMMC,
Yeah,
you get a lot of
hard.
sweat equity, right? Like,
It's crazy. Yeah.
celebrate the win,
Mhm.
but take a break, go back in, make sure. And this is the one thing that I talk about is when you get there, make sure you can maintain it,
Yes, that's exactly the case too. You got to maintain it.
right? Because a lot of times I get in there like, oh yeah, we've got it all in. Great. Who's monitoring the logs? Who's doing this? Who's
Mhm.
that? When's the last time you reviewed them?
Mhm.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. Right.
You have
Yeah.
to maintain this. It's not just check the box, you
Right.
got it installed.
Mhm.
Like and one of the questions I get asked constantly is like, what should I do with a SOC provider? Right. Now
Mhm.
that has a SIM. I said,
Yeah.
well, do you do weekly or monthly reviews with them? What do you mean? Like, do you go
Oh yeah.
through the due
Have
diligence?
to. Yeah.
What's your reporting? How are you guys reporting?
Mhm.
How are we tuning? What are you guys seeing in the industry?
Mhm.
Like, do you guys go through on a regular basis because they have multiple clients,
Mhm.
10 to 100, 1,000 clients. They're seeing kind of what's going on in the industry. Are you improving or
Yeah.
there's some area that you're lacking? Is there areas you need to harden? Having great conversation with them will only help you improve. But
Mhm.
like you said, that's just a milestone that you're going to keep pushing that needle.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And if I can speak to the executives on the listening again, you have to be involved in these conversations too. You're the head of the organization. You're the chief of all warfare. This is when it comes to cyber, it is the one thing that can take you out of business overnight. You have to, your team needs your gut reactions to things in there. You've got so much experience in business. You've got so much experience in your organizations. They need you to be able to bring that experience into those phone conversations. You have to get involved, and I think it'll help when you do. I think you'll have a lot less fear. you'll have a lot more of your finger on the pulse of that part of your organization. And as I speak to executives, especially ones after breach,
Mhm.
you know, that's the thing. They're like, I just didn't know anything about that side of the business. And you can ask them anything about everything else in their organization, and they know. You could bring them a report, and they would know something's wrong in it. They may not know why, but they'll know.
Mhm.
Anything to do with cyber, they just don't. And so I would really encourage you to, get to understand, spend a lot of time with your CISOs, spend a lot of time, get to know your analyst team, get to know your security team, because those are the people that are literally standing the line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to keep bad things from happening in your organization. A lot of times, even after breaches to you, because we do a lot of incident response for organizations that are not clients of ours, right? And we do it for our clients too. But the thing that you find after that is, where they read through this breach report and they're like, man, if I had just known this stuff 6 months ago, or if I had just, sometimes, especially in some organizations, the first time they meet their cyber team is during a breach.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So,
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Now, jumping into the cyber world, one of
mhm,
the questions I want to ask you, I know we were talking earlier is about cyber crimes as a service.
mhm,
Kind of go on that because you just talked about you did like ransomware, you kind of do,
yeah,
incident response.
mhm.
What are you seeing with the cyber as a service?
Yeah. So what's really interesting, is what we started seeing is a trajectory change. So right around 2020, you saw this lull, and whenever you see a lull in anything, it's just a wave, right? You're like, what are they planning to do next? Now, what we believe happened during 2020, a lot of people had time on their hands, and we saw nation states like China, Russia, ran when the Biden administration came back and said, "Hey, it's now an act of war to attack the United States with the cyber attack." Nation states at that point went, "Okay, we need a proxy,"
Right.
and so they went out. They found all these people that were low level, mid level people. They gave them tools. They gave them access to training. They spun up these organizations, and then, you saw a lot of cybercrime as a service. You saw ransomware as a service organizations. You saw them become a lot more substantiated businesses because they were getting funneled money
Mhm.
from these nation state organizations to where they have CISOs, they have CEOs, they have IT staff, they have support staff, they have customer service people. They are built exactly like a business. They have brick and mortar organizations. They're all over the world, and they're protected by these nation states because why? Because they funneled and fueled them with tools and technology and skill set, so that way that organization can go do things and make a bunch of revenue. But when these nation states ask them to help with things, then they have to come and help, right?
Right.
And so, it's a twofold thing. And we saw that before 2020, but post 2020, it's just exacerbated even more because China and Russia aren't going to attack us directly anymore as a nation, especially in different sectors, because the
Right.
US will see that as a declaration of war.
Right. And I think that came prevalent to me is when you started to see that people were getting customer service support. And then
Mhm.
we did threat actor
Right.
negotiation, and you'd have to talk to a customer service person.
Right. I know. Right. Yeah.
You have a portal
Yeah.
and you'd be in the dark web
Mhm.
and you do it and you talk to a customer service person.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, what's what do you mean a customer? They were a
Yeah.
security analyst helping us with our incident, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
what? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here, right?
Right. And it was crazy too. Like some of these, we've even seen it where at the end of the event, right? They paid him off, all that stuff has happened. They come back and say, "Hey, we'll help you remediate your environment so it doesn't happen again,
So they'll
but
give you a
you have to
report.
pay us to
Yeah.
do it."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Like what the heck?" And some companies pay to have them have the actual people that attack them teach them how to remediate
Mhm.
their infrastructure. And that's just the craziest thing to me. It's crazy how they can psychologically take a victim and then get the victim to trust them enough to give them access to then fix things. Because at
Right.
the end of the day, you gotta realize is that the moment you pay, right, you're going to have a repeat attack,
Oh,
because
100%.
now you've got a reputation in the dark web and with these threat actors. And in a lot of cases we find, because we'll be brought in post breach assessment to evaluate if a threat actor is possibly still there post breach, because a lot of these incident responses, an organization will come in, their goal is to find out about that incident,
Mhm.
right? They may not find other persistent threat actors in the environment during that time frame. So we come in after that and go find those, and you find so much persistence after the fact. And some of it is driven because the initial attacker disclosed how they got inside a chat room somewhere in the dark web, and then everybody else just comes in and waits 6 months, and then they do it again. So
Right.
it's pretty crazy.
Or they leave back doors or whatever in the
Backdoors,
environment.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's one thing that people need to take into consideration when you're getting in this industry is like what you're really working to defend, the process you're going to go through. Like you're going to be that person in the room when they're having an incident and
Mhm.
have to understand like exactly what you're talking about. How they get in, how do you
Yeah.
remediate it? How do you negotiate? I've been in numerous negotiations, and you see like sometimes you're negotiating on multiple sides. Like you got
Mhm.
carrier, you got
Yeah.
counsel, you got
Right.
the customer, and then you got the threat actor. And I remember being one where I was like negotiating with the actual customer
Mhm.
not to pay
Yeah.
because we were still looking at the due diligence. We were looking if they're still in
Mhm.
the environment. We're, making sure
Mhm.
that we had everything secure because if you paid, like you said, they might come in again. One of the things we used to say was, you're negotiating with a criminal.
Yeah. Right.
They're not going to be ethical. Like,
They're not going to be ethical. They make you feel like they're going to be, though.
right,
Yeah. There's uh, I study a lot of warfare, and one of the things that hits the United States the most, right, is the way we look at other people.
right,
Because psychologically, we will look at other people in the way in which we see ourselves. So it's really easy to spot a liar
right,
because they're always worried about who's lying. They're always going to try to see if you're lying or not, or someone that's a thief, right? They're always thinking, a thief is going to think other people are thieves, right? Because you see other people through your own lens.
right,
And so in the U.S., significantly, we look at ourselves, or just even like, I would say, in a way, like we look at our enemy as if they're ethical, right? I mean, same thing with rules of war. Like we like to create rules of war, but in most cases, the people that we fight against, they don't have rules, and even when we create rules, they're going to break them. So,
right.
so you have to really be aware that you're fighting against people that have no rules. They really don't have any ethics in it. They're really out for themselves, and you have to operate that way too.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think they're like you talked about rules of engagement, right? Like we do,
Mhm.
we try to be ethical, and even if we're dealing with criminals
Mhm.
on how we engage. But like you said, there is no moral ground for them. They have a mission. They're trying
Mhm.
to execute on it, and that's it.
Yeah, we had an interesting incident we worked recently. Cybercrime as a service, but a different bent, right? And so when you do incidents and it was a true incident, you have to see what happened, why it happened, what took place. You're proving what took place. What we're what we saw in this incident, what we're starting to see even more after that is, and I'll paint the scenario for it. This organization, uh, healthcare provider, gets a call from the U.S. government,
Right,
says you've been breached. The reason they saw that is because they were in a dark web chat room and saw a file pop up. Someone was trying to sell data for that organization,
right,
right? So they reach out, and so they they call the organization. Then all of a sudden, you see this news pop up in different news wires that that company's been breached within like an hour,
right,
and then a class action lawsuit pops up against them within 2 hours. And so, we get called in, we start looking at what's going on. We go into that dark web chat room, we find out that it's actually false data.
right,
Now, at that point, they had been cut off by different providers that they use their software. They had a class action lawsuit against them. Things were happening in the news already, all within just hours. What happened was this threat actor group never actually breached their infrastructure, never breached their data. They just took data, created fake data with AI,
right,
patient data, as close as they could think, right? Or to create it so it looked legitimate, put it in a dark web room, created a scenario where they could reach out to this company. And they had reached out to them and said, hey, we will release the rest of your data unless you pay us money. They almost did,
Right.
and we were able to stop it. So what we're seeing now even more is these actors aren't even stealing data. They're
Right.
just creating these elaborate schemes to make it seem like you've got all this pressure. You've been hacked. Your data's out there. You're getting shut down by your third-party providers. You can't operate anymore, all within hours. Pay the ransom and then go away. And they didn't have to do any work other than just create a fake data set that they popped up into a chat room somewhere. So, back to data being important in those kinds of scenarios, if you don't have data to prove it didn't happen, guess what? Now you had a breach that you can't prove it had happened or not, right? And if you're only operating off of we had a breach because data showed up in the dark web or data showed up somewhere, or because we got a ransomware note, you may not have actually had a breach. So you have to prove that you didn't,
Right.
as well. And because if you just go after it like, okay, let's declare a breach, let's do an incident response, that can cost you millions of dollars to do that incident response.
Mhm.
And that's what those actors are banking on. They're banking on the fact that you don't want to do this big incident. They're banking on the fact that they're going to promise you to not release the rest of the data, and they're banking on the fact that you don't know how to validate it, and so you'll just get a $500,000 ransom to them before they release the rest of it, instead of doing a $2 million investigation. So
Right.
having data in your environment you can trust, having processes that you can trust, because once you get into a scenario where someone's accused you of an incident, you're just not going to be in the right frame of mind, right? You're going to be hyped up, your adrenaline's flowing, you're going to be thinking that your frontal cortex is going to start shutting down, and they're banking on the fact that you're not going to have the systems to keep you in the right frame of mind so you can make the right decisions.
And I want to go into that because I mean, you brought up a good point. Like right now, the attacks are more layered, right? When you're looking at the scams, it's not one for one. It's not like, hey, I send you a phishing email and then I'm going to compromise you and then we're going to go that way. There's layers to it and complexity.
Yeah.
Right. And I would love to hear kind of your viewpoint on that, like how scams now are creating multiple layers in the attack vector of that actual attack.
Yeah, I mean, look at it that it's just what I just what that scenario just walked through. What gave the entire thing credence, because we did an after action report with them. We were like, why? What was it that really made you think that this was real, right? And not in an accusatory way or a bad way. It's like, man, this was a pretty crazy thing. What was it? And they said it was because the FBI called, or that CISA called them.
Right.
Well, how did CISA call them? Because the threat actor knew that CISA and the FBI watched that chat room. They knew if they dumped data in there with a company name on it, that company was going to get a phone call from CISA or the FBI.
Right.
And so they knew, and they just waited.
Right.
And so, when you think about these schemes, these hackers spend months and months creating systems, right? They're systems, just like we would in a business. They're not emotionally driven. They're not, they don't fly by the seat of their pants. They have honed this skill for years, and they have a very specific system that they follow. We have to have the same systems of response on our side, right? So that way you can root those things out. But it all starts with how do you create the urgency of notification, right? And that's what they did with CISA and the FBI. And in that case too, what's interesting is they used our own systems against us, right? The own systems of detection. Next, what did they do? They reached out in ways that would create a heightened sense of fear. Class action lawsuit, right? They put specific information and posts into specific places because they knew the vendors that organization used,
right?
So that the vendors would see it and shut them off, right? So they took down their ability to do business. And if you look at warfare, there's these concentric circles until you get to the center, and they just went after each one of those. So that organization got to a point where they didn't think they could operate unless they paid the ransom.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting if you sit back, and this is where I tell a lot of cybersecurity people that you got to be the calm in the storm. You got to be the one to level head, because they are doing, like, and you mentioned this, like they are trying to put you in a stressful state, fight, flight, or freeze, right? They're trying to put you into one of those states where you're not logically thinking, you're reacting. I mean, I've been in an instance where the CEO just loses their mind and starts
Right.
swearing, "I'm going to go attack the
Yeah.
person. Can't we hire someone to go get them?" Like
Yeah. Right.
that way. And then you got other ones that just can't talk in the meeting. Like they're frozen. The
Yeah.
first
Right.
instance they ever dealt with, oh my God, are we shutting down the company? We're going to lose millions of dollars. Like they're completely understand, right? They're completely frozen. Right. And I've had one incident where there's a senior engineer left in the middle of the incident, quit the company.
Yeah.
Right. He was like, I'm done. Like I can't deal with this. But you get all of that because they put them in that stressful state, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right. The pressure. Like you've known this and you've seen that. Like I've had incidents where they email, they call the FBI. They're doing everything to get that pressure on that organization to make a decision. Right. And like you said, they're gonna, release a press release and do that. They're gonna notify their vendors and all that is heightened stress for the organization. But as cybersecurity experts, we got to be kind of like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
What's real? What can we control? How do we manage this?
Right.
A lot of times you go into war rooms and you're doing all this, right?
Right.
And you're juggling different swim lanes.
Right. I would say I've had the same experience you have. And this, this is not meant to, what I'm about to say is not meant to offend people, right? At all. It's not meant to offend this role. It's just meant to more stir up this sense of purpose. In an incident, the most important person in the room is the CEO of the company. The biggest liability in the room is the CEO of the company. And the difference between being a liability or being the biggest asset is how you prepare your mind to deal with that stress. Because when you're faced with literally your entire company getting pulled out from underneath you, and generally it happens in the middle of the night, you just got woken up. Preparing for that is more mental preparation than it is, anything you're going to do, any type of, tabletop exercise, you're going to do things like that. Because tabletop exercises, when you tabletop exercise, for people that maybe not know what those are, they're simulations, right? Someone says, oh, we've been breached. And then you walk through all your systems. You don't have that same pressure.
Depends.
So it does.
Depends. And I'll give you context.
Go for it.
I used to do that. And we used to do the same thing, but I used to do timestamps, all that. You had to make
That's awesome. That's what I was going to get. Yeah.
Because what happens is, is when I've been in tabletop exercises, you sit there and you can talk and you can have a conversation and you can bring someone in and then we're going to take lunch and then we're going to come back.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And they had us come in and like, I'm going to go through this scenario as a tabletop exercise, but it's going to be timed. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be like a company goes through a stress test. Like you get like restaurants and they send 100 people into the restaurant and see how your staff handled it. I'm going to do the same thing as we're going through it, because you and I know they have to train that muscle, because off hours, people are on vacation, someone's not accessible. Like all those scenarios happen. If they're not training that and they're trained to relax in a boardroom, everyone has a drink, they're having lunch and snacks, everyone's calm. When they get in a real incident, it's going to be like night and day for them.
It's been a night and day. One thing I love about Jeff, Jeff Bezos has his customer service, his validation of their customer service, right? He'll pick up a random customer service number for someone in his company in Amazon, and he'll just call it. He'll see how long it takes for them to answer. So he does it randomly. And I love the approach that you're taking there, because a tabletop exercise shouldn't be scheduled. It should, only a few people should know what's going to happen. It should be, 11 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, and everybody's going to come in and just have to sleep in the overnight there. And the reason for that is, to your point, is you have to do it tired. You have to. I was watching a I forget which one it was, but there's shows where people get on and they're taken through like fake boot camps and all these things, and they're competing. And one of these guys is Dragon, and he's getting yelled in the face by the fake instructor or whatever. And it comes out that this guy's never trained anything physical hungry. Right. He's never fasted while he was training, and they're not allowed to eat for like 2 days. And he's going, I can't believe you've never trained hungry. So the thing is that you have to create the same physiological stressors when you're training for these things. That's one of the first things, because one of the layers in your layered scams is they do it at the most inconvenient time for you.
Mhm.
So, when you're looking at how these scams happen and the layers that exist, right? You're looking at all the players. You have to create the same scenario when you're training so you can be in the right state of mind. The other thing too is you have to think a bit evil. Like we like to sit around and as a CEO, I think, okay, if I'm the CEO of a layered cybersecurity as a service, scam company, how am I going to attack myself? What am I
Yeah.
going to do? How am I going to get in my own head? Right. And I have everyone on my team do their counterparts because those exact counterparts happen.
Mhm.
And, over there. So you really have to create the same physiological stressors. You got to be thinking outside the box and, and realize that whatever plan you had at the beginning, whatever plan you tested is going to get thrown out the door, right? Because and I'll say this: if you built your plan off of anything that's publicly, if you grab the incident response plan off the internet and just
Mhm.
instrument it in your organization, threat actors have already downloaded that incident response plan. And that's why I love that you're taking your clients through those things and through those stressors because those are the things that, you're just not going to download from the internet, you
Well,
know?
the other thing I did too was, so we did a scoping exercise normally when we go through, okay, who's your key, stakeholders and resources in the
Yeah,
team, and we would pull them out in the middle of the engagement
I love that. That's awesome.
because, as you know, there's generally that
Mhm.
one guy in the room that can answer all the questions.
Yeah, right.
Well, they're not available,
That's so awesome. Yeah,
and now they're
I love
going, well, but
it. Mhm.
John's the guy we ask.
Yeah,
Well, what is it? I mean,
yeah.
you got the threat actor said he's going to release this in 1 hour. Like, what's going on? And then
Mhm.
you have them in that stressful state because now their main resource is gone. Now they have
Yeah,
to answer it. Now
mhm.
the ransoms increasing. Like, it's all this pressure. And
Yeah,
I made sure I went through that with these different organizations because, like you said, you just don't know what's going to happen.
yeah.
You don't know if someone's not going to be available. You don't know if a
Mhm,
system's going down. You don't know if this. You don't know if all of a sudden there's a secondary attack,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
You
mhm,
know, things along that line. When you throw those little, challenges in it, it
mhm,
makes it real because when they go through it, they're not as stressed and they kind of go, oh, okay, we've trained that. We've trained
mhm.
that area. Okay. John's not, I got the answers. I've got, disaster recovery plan. I've got, standing operating procedures, right? I've got run books. I can go through this myself or anyone can grab it and run with it. So at least it's not, I'm relying on one person.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's a really fun way to do it. Did you, how did they respond to that
So
when
what
you
happened was
pulled
I
people
had
out?
various ones that wanted to go through the thorough tabletop exercise, had a great experience, and I actually had feedback that one of the organizations that we did that with actually had an incident after,
Oh,
and
nice.
their response time was like they had
Mhm,
a 15-minute response
mhm,
time, they remediate within an hour, and they had a
mhm.
debriefing in 2. And they're like, "If we
Mm.
didn't do that, we wouldn't have been on the ball." Then I've
Yeah,
had
right.
other organizations, "Well, I don't know if we wanna do that. I don't know if we wanna pull that." And I
Mm.
found they had more challenges later because
Yeah.
they didn't do the due diligence. Because when a real situation happened, they kept coming back saying, "Well, I didn't realize what you're saying was gonna be like that."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "I'm not telling you because I just built this up. I'm telling you because the
Yeah,
100 plus
right.
incidents I've gone
Yeah.
through this year, that's what we've dealt with. So I'm trying
Mhm,
to give you real world situations. So when
mhm.
you deal with it, it's fresh in your mind, your
Yeah.
team's
Mhm,
up, and they can deal with it. Even though it's going to go left, it's going to go right. You still can handle that stressor that's going to happen
mhm.
and be able to work through it in a timely manner that it's not
Yeah.
a major ransomware event.
Mhm,
It's a minor cybersecurity incident.
mhm,
And you guys dealt with it. Yes, everyone's sweating. It's stressful, but at least you got through it
mhm,
versus reporting obligations, notifying clients, notifying vendors,
mhm,
partners, and all that, and going through that route, having to pay a ransom.
mhm.
You don't want to have to do it if you do the due diligence up front.
Right. Because their whole thing is if you can compress time for people, they'll make bad decisions,
Yeah.
right? Unless they're prepared. And I love that you had the tale of two stories, one that was prepared and one that decided not to. And what I think the moral of the story there is take the route of making it hard when you're testing, when you control time, right? Don't just wait till somebody else controls time. One thing that back to layers as well is these are very elaborate networks now. These are not just one entity or one group. They're very elaborate global networks. A lot of the ransomware money funds terrorism. A lot of it.
Well, that's where you get the sanction organizations. I want to go a little bit in that too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it funds terrorism. And so, they're coming out, getting ransom, funding terrorism. That terrorism goes back out again. Right. So it's, we got to be really, really aware of that, and really aware of the fact that they have built these elaborate ways to do this.
Well, and the other thing, then that's why I wanted to kind of go a little bit deep so people know this on both spectrums. Anytime you're going to pay a ransom and you're deciding as a business with your insurance, with your counsel, your breach coach, you made that decision. You have to go through an OFAC, the Office of Financial Affairs. You have to go through that and submit an application because they'll identify if that's been a sanctioned organization, which, like you said, is known to be a terrorist organization. Because I had a customer that went out and paid separately against our advice, against our recommendations before we could do the OFAC check, and they had the FBI at their door that next day. Right?
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. And so think about, if you talk to, we sell cybersecurity, and we've spoken to decision makers at organizations, and we've literally been told, hey, that's why we have insurance. I'm like, wait, what? That you're not going to put what you need in place? Well, that's why we have insurance, right? Because sometimes organizations see cybersecurity as a prohibitive thing within the organization to doing business. I will tell you this: if cybersecurity is done well, I know you've done in your career, you do cybersecurity well, it actually is built around helping you thrive as an organization, not as a limiter. But man, you get in these scenarios, you can't bank on the fact that you can pay the ransom. You can't bank on the fact that your insurance company is going to negotiate and pay it, because they may come back and say you can't, depending on who attacked you, and now you have no recourse. And if you have no disaster recovery plan, or
the other thing is the policy, as you're going towards, the policy has a stipulation of your controls.
Yes.
If you're negligent on those controls, they'll deny the claim.
Then they deny the claim, which is crazy.
Yeah. No, you don't have MFA, you don't have a SIM, you don't have a SOC, you don't have this, you're not managing your firewalls, you're not doing administrative, you're not looking at your privilege accounts, you're not doing that. Sorry, claim denied. Now
claim denied.
Now all that forensics, the professional services, right? Any threat actor negotiation, the ransomware you have to pay. Sorry, that's all on you now.
Yeah, it's all on you. And from laws from yesteryear, there's personal liability in the boardroom. There's personal liability at the C-level. And that's why you got to prepare for all this stuff up front, because you can't make game day decisions on things that, especially when the U.S. government's concerned, especially organizations on the OFAC list, you're really bound. And to your point, I'll say this: one of the things that I love asking people to do is asking their cybersecurity companies how much they'll guarantee.
Right.
And what you'll find is a lot of their guarantees are not backed by them; they're backed by insurance policies. And so then I ask, well, can I see what's on those insurance policies? And to your exact point, is that a lot of times, and the insurance industry knows what they're doing, right? They've got very clear things on these as responsibilities for the organization. And if you're not meeting those, your claim is going to get denied. And the thing I'll tell you is, a lot of the IR companies that insurance providers bring in, guess who they work for?
Yeah.
The insurance provider. They're there to figure out, right, what happened. They're like an adjuster, right? They're there to figure out what happened, who did it, who's at fault. And if they come in and do that instant response, and they find out that you didn't do your due diligence in advance, your claim might be denied. Well, you might end up paying for an instant response to an instant response company you didn't even bring in. So you got to be really careful about really prepping up front, really understanding your risks, really understanding what your true coverage is. I would also say is, we come across organizations all the time that didn't have their policies written well, right? And so they didn't cover the things they thought they would cover. So there's a lot to really make sure you have done in advance. Understand things like OFAC, what your opportunities are there, even go meet your local FBI agents, right? You're going to talk to them in an incident anyway. You might as well meet them up front.
Right.
If you're a senior level, executive or a board member, go grab lunch with your IT staff, go grab lunch with your cyber teams, get to know them so much that you know the names of their pets, because you got to know them at a point where when you have to go to war together, it's not the first time you met them, right? And because they got to know that you're fighting for them and and they're fighting for you, and you got to get through all those pleasantries, out of the way before you have to go to war together.
You also, and I'm going to add to that, I think you should work on a project, one, if not multiple projects with them, to see how they work through their methodology, their logic, their process, how they communicate, because you don't want them in a meeting and they're dropping F-bombs while you have the board there and they're just not polished, right? And you don't want them in a situation where they're hard in the sand. Well, I'm not doing that, right? When and I do, in these incidents, it's all hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Everyone's helping out. Whatever you need to do, everyone's in. And you want to make sure you've got the right team, your IT team, your security team. They understand the environment. They understand the ecosystem. They all understand the ethos of the organization, what's expected.
Right.
And that happens. Not, I close their arms. I'm not doing that. That's not my job. And they have a key responsibility, i.e. backups. They're the one restoring the backups, but I'm not working on weekends and after hours. Well, dude, we're in the middle of an incident.
It's happened. It's happened. And, and you can't muscle someone in that position. Then they hold all the cards, right? And you can't muscle them in there. You have to have the relationships, and you have to, get to know your team, spend time with them. I love that you just said, work on some projects with them. I think that's a phenomenal idea. I hadn't thought about that, because you just get used to being a team, right? And it builds trust. And what you might find is you got some pretty stellar people on your team that make great decisions. You might find that maybe you don't, and you need to adjust that. But knowing who they are, knowing how they work, knowing their work ethic, knowing how much they care about the organization they're working for. But I will tell you that, I've seen the most dedication within organizations from IT operations people, IT operations security people. They tend to be the most understaffed, underfunded, MacGyver, duct tape, trying to make things work people. They'll usually ride or die for the organization they work for.
100%. And then, and think the one thing I've found, you've got the ride or die, or you got the ones that just come and it's a paycheck, they do the job and do that. And that's why I said work a project with them, because you get to understand that side, right? And you're gonna have the mixture of both. Like, it's not good or bad, but at least you know where they sit in that role, and if they are the right fit for what you need from them holistically, not just they do that job and that's what they do. But if we have an incident, if there's something going on, will that person or team be the people I can rely on when I need them the most?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And be aware of their mental health too, right?
Oh,
like
don't
you have to, right. You have to let them, take a break, get them some sleep, buy them food, get them donuts, let them call their family, remind them to call their family, remind them to eat, those types of things, because they're really dedicated people. Like you said, they're gonna forget to do those things. The ones that wanted to cross their arms, you probably shouldn't have them in a role that you're going to require them to be there all night long, or at least know that they're not going to be that person for you.
Right. And that's where you have the redundancies, right? Of people, process, and technology, right? That if John's not the guy that's going to be there 24/7, who backs up John and knows his role, his position, his systems that can take over. And to your point, sometimes there's sprints where you have to rotate in and out staff.
Yeah, there is.
Right. I've been on instances where there's 72 hours to like 2 weeks long, and they're just sprinting because their servers are down, their systems are completely pooched. Right. The actual, now they try to bring it up and the hardware's failing. Like, and I know with one of the organization I worked with, we would drop staff down just to give them a break. Right. And as part of the engagement, we'd have like 3 or 4 technical people, senior engineers, senior IT people drop into the environment to give the people breaks, because they've been running for 72 hours straight.
Right. Yeah. But a lot of companies don't have the bench to do that because they've made their team so thin.
Yeah.
So maybe that's another thing, is make sure you have you have the bench that understands, because you can't rotate someone out that doesn't know what they need to do. So to your
Cross
point,
training.
having redundancy in roles, making sure you have enough buffer to deal with things that come up. Most organizations will get breached. I mean,
Yeah.
they just will, or at least attacked. And the best way you can do is make sure you've got the team, the process, the people, the technology, the practice, the reps to make sure that when it does happen, you're good, because the layered scam is not just dropped ransomware and because someone clicked on a link. They are well planned, well funded, well fortified, well instructed people that are coming after you.
I'm going to say this on my side.
Mhm.
Most of the time, I've dealt with some threat actors where you're surprised they got into the
Oh,
environment.
that's true. I have seen that. Yeah, I have seen that.
I don't know how
Yeah.
you like. And talking about that, and I know we got a couple minutes
Yeah.
left. I've seen some ransom as a service where I knew I could tell by the way that ransomware was going that they actually purchased a package.
Oh, 100%.
They had
Yeah,
help desk, they had
100%.
support. Because I remember one I went through, and I remember we did some research on the threat actor group, and one of the things they posted online that they would never hack education or hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of those that they compromised or
Mhm.
they got into. And we said, how are we supposed to do that considering your article that said this?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, we could say, oh, we have to, we'll get back to you. And then about, I think it was like 12 hours, 18 hours later, oh yeah, don't worry. Here's the encryption keys. We're sorry for your inconvenience.
Mhm.
Oh, they paid for something and it
Right.
wasn't the right thing. And all of a sudden they executed it. And then
Yeah, right.
now they got,
Yeah.
oh, that's not us. That's not what we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right, right. Well, that's that being taught, being funded. These nation states are building, these groups that work for them. They're building their networks. They're giving them access to tools. They're giving them funding. They're giving them training. And to your point, they may not know how to use it. And that leads to another risk there, is that you might have a threat actor. We've had seen this where they didn't know how to get decryption keys to you, to that same point, right? It's
Right.
like you paid, but now they don't know how to get it because they messed it up.
Right.
So, right.
And
Or you have double encryption,
yeah.
right? Like you have a file get encrypted and then it gets encrypted again, and it created two different keys, and you don't know what sequence that was. So you actually can't decrypt your data anyway. So the moral of this story is, don't bank on the fact that you'll get decryption keys.
Mhm.
Don't bank on the fact that insurance will pay.
Right.
Don't bank on the fact that you're going to be even permitted to pay, because you might not be by the US government. And more of these threat actor groups, because they're connected to, countries on the OFAC, more and more getting added to this list all the time, right? So
Yeah.
just got to be prepared.
Now I know we have a couple minutes left. Anything you wanted to
Yeah.
add, Chris?
I would say this, in light of the last week, we sent this out to our clients, and I've been telling every CEO I know, make a very solid AI governance strategy
Mhm.
with your organization. Um, the thing that we just saw with Claude Bot, right? An agentic AI, and it was easily downloadable, easily deployable. Anyone could deploy it on their local system. You could buy a virtual private server and deploy it for $5. The interesting thing about it is that it didn't have to be operating within your company.
Mhm.
It could be operating in someone's house, and they just could type in their username and password, type in their MFA token, give those tokens for all their accounts to these devices, and then it had access to literally your corporate email. It had access to do things and send and receive emails and corporate chats and things like that.
Yeah.
So I would very highly look at creating what is allowed and what's not within your organization, but drive it not as a let's not adopt this ever approach, but talking about, how do we adopt this in the future, right? And
Mhm.
not look at it like AI is bad. AI is coming your way, and you should use AI in your organization because it's going to dramatically help you become a lot more scalable. So that's the first thing, is I would say, definitely, look at an AI strategy, but look at it in terms of what are the problems you're trying to solve, involve your team, especially the people that would just go install it anyway. But but what just happened this past week with Claudebot, like I said, I think there's going to be a significant amount of data breaches that are going to come out of this last week that we're going to find out in the months to come,
Mhm.
because people just deployed it within their organization. So I would heavily talk to your employees about it, heavily talk to your teams. If you're on a security team, help create some of these policies. You could talk to your executive team about it, your managers, but really think about this, because people are going to adopt it. It is going to impact your life, and there's going to be no way to detect it because it's a legitimate login, legitimate MFA at their house that
Mhm.
they connect to anyway. So all your behavioral learning is not going to detect it, things like that. There's some things you can do to detect it, but don't bank on it. Just create those policies in place. Have the conversation with your team and talk a lot with them on it, but show them how you're going to work together with them to develop these efficiencies in the future. Right.
So, one thing I'd add, and I'm going to put my security hat on here and kind of my
Go for it.
tinfoil hat too, is
Yeah.
I go the other way. I go like almost like what we have is like a software development life cycle, right?
Yeah.
Kind of that. Do that with your AI. That there's a
Yes.
due diligence process, right?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing that I see is everything's incorporating some, like Teams has AI, Zoom has AI, Outlook
Everything.
has AI, like Exchange, like all these are incorporating AI, but a lot of people are just checking the box, letting it go without due
Yeah.
diligence. What does it do?
Yeah. Right.
Like,
What's it
what does
do?
it do?
Why is
What
it
does it have
important?
access? What is it going
Yeah.
to,
Right.
where's the data going to be stored? Like one of the things that, a lot of our companies that we work with, data residency, they don't
Mhm.
realize that the data is actually stored in China.
It's
And they're like,
Yep. Right.
they're a
Exactly.
US company or whatever. And they're like, well, we have to have our data in the US. Well,
Right.
you're using an AI tool that's
Right.
scraping data
Yeah.
that you're inputting, and now it's in
Yeah.
China.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I'm getting at is have the conversation. Figure out how you're going to evaluate it, because your team's going to deploy it if you don't. And so you need to really have those conversations, put it into an SDLC. Also, read the fine print,
Yeah.
because whatever's created in some of these AI platforms, the intellectual property is owned by the organization that's providing the LLM, not by you. So you could see major intellectual property loss going out, and in the future might find out the very core of your business can't even operate anymore because someone else owns that IP. So you got to be really careful with what's up, but you got to have those conversations. You got to really have a governance around it. You got to have it, really look at it in the same terms of SDLC. What are the problems you're trying to solve?
Yeah.
Are they solving it? Evaluate it across the board. So,
And if you don't, like anyone that's watching, if you guys don't have, if you're trying to pull something out, if you're using Chat GBT to try to figure out this, actually have someone that comes in the industry and review that for you. Like, what's
right.
that process? How do they do it? What's the training model? How's the model trained? Are they using customer data? Like all these questions you might not ask or get from a policy, a document's kind of automated generate. Have someone that's in the industry be able to go through that with you to kind of cross the T's, dot the I's to make sure you're hitting all. Because, like you said, is the data being used? Like now, do they own the data? Is the data being trained? And now other customers have access to that data because now they're doing it through the model. So when they punch in, hey, like, how do I design? I'll use, like, for example, like a SIM tool, and I'm dividing my own customized SIM tool, and I'm doing that, and I have an AI tool that's helping me to do it. But now that AI tool is now global, that
Mm-hmm.
other people have it, and someone goes, I want to
Right.
create a SIM. What's the
Right.
most effective way to do it? Draw me out a
Mm-hmm.
schematic, and it's all mine.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
So things that people have to think about versus, oh, it's just
Mm-hmm.
this great new innovation. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the
Yeah.
due diligence. And I'm not against, like you, I'm not against using AI as long
Yeah.
as you do
I
the
think
due
it's awesome.
diligence. Yeah.
It's awesome. You should absolutely use it in your business, but have due diligence. One point you just made, which I really want to foot stomp here. You said bring someone from outside your organization. Here's why this is important. You may have really, really smart people in your org. Their primary job isn't figuring out all the pitfalls of AI usage in your org. If you bring someone in from outside your org, they'll make sure they've worked with other companies before, they have some experience, but you're going to get the benefit of what they learned working with those other organizations. It's the same thing with security.
Mhm.
If you just see security in your own organization, you're never going to see early adoption or early detection or things like that without talking to other organizations. So it's the same thing here, is bring someone in from outside your organization with experience that can help you walk through that process. Because if you're just Googling or ChatGPTing it or try to figure that out on the inside, your team members are already focused on other parts of their job. They're not going to give it their full diligence,
Right.
but they're also potentially going to miss something. You'll recreate mistakes that someone else has already solved.
And like you said, and I agree with you, that person generally coming in has gone through those challenges, has
Yes.
gone through this discussion,
Yes.
has had that
Yes.
discussion with counsel,
Yeah.
lawyers, outside parties, third party due diligence.
Yep.
So they're coming in saying, okay, hold on, time out. I'm going to share what I've learned being in part of these conversations, and I'm going to help you kind of weed through it. So you have a better process, policy, due diligence that is going to come through, because this is what's happening in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I leave one more bit
One
of
more,
wisdom?
go ahead.
Have grace with each other.
Yeah.
There is so much one and done, you're out of here fear in this industry. And you will get people that care more if they know they have some trust and security in their role. Now, if someone's done just something completely off the wire, crazy, ridiculous, derelict of duties, yeah, that's a different story. But people should be making mistakes because they're innovating. Make sure that you're learning from those, you're growing from those, you're helping people grow, especially with your vendors. Have grace with your vendors, have grace with your teammates. Build people that are dedicated to you, right? Build people that are dedicated to you, and they'll fight for you till the death, right? And but if you create this overhead of fear, you're gonna always have someone that's gonna be, thinking about, could their actions cause them to be, kicked out, and that's
They
never
might have
good.
one foot out the door too, right?
Exactly right.
You always
Yeah.
look at the kind of the next best option.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Build dedication. Don't build compliance, if that makes sense.
No,
So,
makes sense. So Chris, best way to get a hold of you, I got here is LinkedIn. If anyone
Mhm.
wants to copy that down, take a look at that. I'll leave it on just for a second. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been amazing. I've
My
learned a
pleasure.
lot
It was fun.
myself. Now, if
Likewise.
anyone wants to connect with Vigilance as his organization, here's the URL. Check it out. Go to Vigilance right now. Check it out. See if there's anything you guys will be interested in. I mean, Chris is a wealth of knowledge, as you can tell. A lot of information that we shared here, and there was a lot more that we didn't even cover. So, Chris, I'd love to have you again on,
Sure.
probably in
Love
the
to.
near future. We have some time.
Would love to. Thanks, Brandon. I really enjoyed it. It was awesome. I learned some things as well, man. It was fun. It was a
That's
good time.
awesome. Well, thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks. Talk to you later.
All right, everyone. That was a good stream. I mean, I learned a lot from Chris. There's a lot going on in the industry. I mean, you're going to look at everything that we talked about is things that we're doing day in and day out, right? We're dealing with different organizations, different people, different executives, and really things that, I took away from this is really looking at what's going on in the industry, building partnerships and relationships with people, understanding what's going on with the data. Like, I mean, thing that Chris brought up right at the start, understanding the quality of the data that you're looking at. Now, I talked about being, paralysis by analysis. There's a lot of data out there. I mean, I know for myself of reporting and compliance audits, and you got your SIM reports and all that. You can have so much data you have to go through, but it's like he says, and I totally agree with him. The data has to be accurate. There has to be a good source that you're getting from, so you get the right information, so you can make the right decisions. So I totally agree with Chris. I totally agree with his process of how he works with his clients and what we're doing. One thing I talked about was, tabletop exercising and just the environment. One thing I recommend too, and just that your takeaway is, make sure when you're training, make sure when you're doing your education, make sure when you're setting up your systems, make sure when you're doing tabletop exercise, make sure when you're testing it, it's testing it like you would in a real world situation. Stress test yourself, stress test the team, because that's one of the times when it's not urgent for the organization to be up, but you see the challenge that happened. Like, I worked with organizations where the backups didn't happen as fast as they thought. Instead of 24 hours, it was 72 hours. So when they were doing their testing, they were able to streamline that and get to where they need to be. So there's a lot of great information here. I mean, go back, watch this Daily Cyber. I'm going to have Chris on again. So don't forget, software is hackable, being connected vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.